Everything you think you know about waiting, struggling, or feeling stuck is about to be overturned. The void is not emptiness, it is the womb of creation. It is where your life is being quietly rewritten, particle by particle, thought by thought, even before you realize it. And yet, most people spend this sacred space in resistance, afraid to look at the silence, afraid to feel the stillness, because they have been told that nothing happening means failure. But what if failure is an illusion? What if the universe, in its infinite intelligence, uses nothingness as a tool, a mirror, and a laboratory to prepare you for everything you have been waiting for? Consider the double-slit experiment, one of the most famous revelations in quantum physics. Electrons fired at a screen act not as fixed objects, but as waves of potential until someone observes them. In other words, reality at its core does not exist as fixed until it is observed. It behaves more like a cloud of possibilities, waiting for the consciousness that will collapse it into a form, a life, a breakthrough. And here's the first key insight. The void you are experiencing operates on the same principle. Your life at this very moment is a field of untapped possibilities, quantum potentialities, waiting for your attention to collapse them into a tangible reality. Every thought you hold, every feeling you inhabit, is a subtle act of observation, gently shaping the outcome of your own evolution. Yet, this raises a deeper question. Why does the void feel like emptiness rather than infinite potential? The answer lies in how consciousness interacts with uncertainty. Human minds crave patterns, predictability, and control, and when they cannot find it, they label the experience as loss, failure, or stagnation. What is actually happening is more astonishing. Your consciousness is being rewired. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to reorganize itself, but ancient mystics call it initiation. In the void, the familiar neural circuits of your old identity are breaking down, like sand slipping through fingers, making space for something new to emerge. Carl Jung described this as the descent into the shadow, the uncomfortable confrontation with the unintegrated aspects of yourself that must surface before you ascend. The void is both mirror and mentor, reflecting what you have ignored and preparing you to step into your highest potential. And yet, most people resist. They fill the void with noise, distraction, or denial. Social media, overthinking, overplanning, seeking external validation. These are all attempts to avoid the profound stillness that is actually your greatest teacher. But imagine if you could surrender not in despair, but in curiosity. Imagine if you treated this interval, this suspension, as a laboratory for your consciousness. Imagine observing it, without judgment, with the awareness that the very act of observation is the first act of creation. Joe Dispenza often speaks of this in his work on quantum mind and coherence. To move beyond old patterns, you must inhabit the state of being that corresponds to the reality you wish to create, even when the external world has not yet reflected it. The void is the training ground for that practice. It is here, in this liminal space, that synchronicity begins to emerge. Perhaps you have noticed subtle patterns, repeated numbers, unexpected coincidences, sudden flashes of insight. Science has historically dismissed these phenomena, but pioneers like Michael Talbot and Jacobo Grinberg studied the interconnectedness of consciousness and reality, noting that when awareness aligns with coherent intention, the universe responds. Ancient traditions recognize this too. The Vedana speaks of Maya, the illusory veil, yet beneath it is Brahman, the unchanging field of pure potential. Egyptian mystery schools taught that before rebirth, one must traverse the silent chamber, confronting nothingness to prepare for illumination. The void you experience is not accidental. It is the same threshold that initiates all transformation, the space where you meet the self that you have not yet realized. Now, let's translate this into your daily life. Imagine your job has disappeared, or a relationship has ended, or a long-sought opportunity seems to evaporate. Your instinct might be to panic, to scramble, to force a solution. But what if instead you observed the field of potential in that space? You can create what I like to call a synchronicity journal, noting the subtle nudges, signs, and coincidences that emerge when you pause, breathe, and allow yourself to witness the unseen. You become the observer, the conscious creator, noticing the invisible threads weaving together before your breakthrough manifests. Every pattern, every intuition, every quiet whisper of guidance becomes a roadmap. This is not wishful thinking. It is a practical engagement with the quantum reality of your own consciousness. Your attention is the force that collapses waves into particles, possibilities into realities. And while you are navigating this liminal space, the emotional and spiritual dimensions deepen. The void is not merely a mental exercise. It is an invitation to embody unity. You begin to perceive yourself not as separate from events, but as the field through which events emerge. Stress, fear, and attachment dissolve when you recognize that you are both the observer and the observed. Practices as simple as silent meditation, coherent breathing, and the deliberate recognition of interconnectedness anchor you in the field of potential rather than the appearance of lack. Heart math research demonstrates that coherence, the alignment of heart and brain rhythms, enhances intuition, clarity, and the perception of synchronistic patterns. In other words, your body, mind, and spirit are all instruments tuning themselves to the frequency that will birth your breakthrough. But the story doesn't end there. The void is also where your old identity dies. When everything familiar disappears, it can feel like a loss, but it is actually liberation. Ancient sages knew this instinctively. The I Ching speaks of the middle void as the precursor to transformation. The Egyptian Book of the Dead describes the dark chamber before resurrection. Even Vedantic texts suggest that before realizing Brahman, one must traverse the empty field of pure being. This is not abstract philosophy. This is practical empowerment. Every moment of uncertainty is an initiation into your own capacity to collapse possibility into presence, to observe into existence, to create consciously rather than react unconsciously. And here's where it gets personal. I want you to take a moment and breathe. Feel the weight of this interval in your life. Maybe it is a career plateau, a spiritual emptiness, relationship challenge. Maybe it is the space between the life you thought you would have and the life that is truly calling you. Now imagine holding that space without resistance, as a field of infinite potential. The void ceases to be a trap, it becomes a launch pad. And if you want to explore more of these hidden layers, to see how the quantum observer within you interacts with every particle of your reality, consider subscribing and joining a community of explorers who treat consciousness as the ultimate frontier. The work we do together here is not surface level. It's about stepping fully into the unseen mechanics of your life, noticing patterns, and collapsing possibility into the breakthroughs you were always capable of creating. Yet even with understanding, the void can feel disorienting. You may feel impatient, frustrated, even scared. And that is natural. The universe is reshaping the rules of your existence, and the old structures, habits, and certainties are dissolving to make room for the new. This is why practices like journaling, intentional reflection, and observing your thoughts without judgment are so critical. You are learning to become a silent observer, a navigator in the field of infinite possibility. Each intuitive nudge, each synchronistic pattern, each subtle insight is a breadcrumb leading you through the void, if only you pay attention. The breakthrough you desire is not in forcing outcomes. It is in aligning with the rhythm of the unfolding potential. And here is the final revelation for this first part. The void is not punishment, it is privilege. It is a sacred space in which you are being initiated into a higher level of consciousness. What most people call despair is actually the universe whispering, "You are ready." And the more you learn to dwell here consciously, observing without attachment, the more you accelerate your capacity to manifest realities that once felt impossible. Your role is simple, yet profound. Notice, observe, and allow. Every moment of stillness, every breath of presence, every gentle attention you give is a collapse of possibility into presence. And when you master this, the breakthrough is inevitable. The journey is just beginning, and yet it has already started. And as we move forward, we will explore what happens when the void deepens, how the hidden truths of suppression, conditioning, and ancient wisdom converge to prepare you for the leap, and what precise steps you can take to navigate this liminal space with power and grace. The next part of this journey will reveal why the very knowledge that could liberate you is often hidden, and how you can reclaim it to accelerate your evolution. What if I told you that the very knowledge that could illuminate the void you're in has been hidden from you? That the breakthroughs available to human consciousness have always been accessible, yet cloaked behind layers of societal conditioning, educational frameworks, and even scientific dogma? The story of the void is not just personal, it is political. It is systemic. It is cosmic. And understanding this is key, because when you see the mechanisms of suppression, you reclaim your authority as a conscious creator. For centuries, mainstream science taught that the universe is a machine, deterministic and rigid, leaving little room for consciousness to actively shape reality. And yet, modern physics, when approached without fear of ridicule, tells a different story. The very pioneers of quantum mechanics, Niels Bohr, Erwin Schrödinger, David Bohm, hinted that consciousness is not a passive observer, but an active participant in the unfolding of reality. Schrödinger famously asked, "What is life but a manifestation of quantum phenomena?" And Bohm's concept of the implicate order suggests that everything is enfolded in everything else, that there is an underlying unity behind apparent separateness. Yet these ideas, so profound, were marginalized, simplified, or dismissed, because the implications threaten the comfortable illusion that reality is outside your influence. This is why the void can feel so disorienting. It is not an accident that you feel alone, uncertain, or destabilized. It is a direct consequence of stepping outside the familiar narrative. And here is the paradox. The moment you feel most lost, most suspended, most unseen, you are closest to the truth. The universe is giving you exactly the conditions you need to notice the invisible threads, the subtle patterns, the quantum levers that are always at your disposal. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the confrontation with the unknown self that must occur before integration and transformation. You are being initiated into a deeper awareness that most never reach, simply because they fear the silence. Yet fear is a choice. And in the void, you can learn to choose differently. The practical tools are deceptively simple, but their effects are profound. Begin by keeping a reality audit, a running record of the coincidences, insights, and intuitive nudges that surface in your life. Note how often the universe speaks in patterns, and notice your own attention as the act that collapses these potentials into your lived experience. Observe without judgment, without forcing outcomes. This is the practice of becoming the silent observer, the navigator in the field of infinite possibilities. It is not about controlling events. It is about aligning your consciousness with the subtle architecture of reality. And this is where ancient wisdom converges with modern science. The I Ching describes the empty space as pregnant with potential, a mirror that reflects back your inner state to reveal what must be integrated. Vedanta teaches that the world is Maya, an illusion, yet Brahman, the unchanging field of consciousness, underlies every appearance. Even the Egyptian initiates, stepping into the dark chamber of the tomb, understood that the void is the threshold between death and rebirth, between the old self and the fully realized being. The tools they used, rituals, meditation, visualization, were all methods to consciously navigate uncertainty, to collapse possibility into manifestation. What they understood intuitively, quantum physics now confirms, consciousness shapes reality. And yet, this knowledge has been systematically suppressed. Education emphasizes memorization over insight. Institutions reward conformity over exploration. Media channels cultivate distraction instead of introspection. Even modern science often limits inquiry to what can be measured, forgetting that the act of measurement itself alters the outcome. The void you are experiencing is not an inconvenience. It is the system's blind spot. It is the space in which your consciousness can operate free from external programming, free from imposed limitation, free to observe into existence. Every moment you resist the void is a moment the old narrative holds sway. Every moment you surrender to curiosity and attention is a moment of liberation. But how do you actively navigate this liminal space without losing your footing? It begins with emotional coherence. When your nervous system is flooded with fear, stress, or doubt, your ability to perceive subtle guidance diminishes. Heart math research shows that the heart and brain produce measurable electromagnetic fields, and when these systems align coherently, your intuition sharpens, your perception of synchronicity increases, and the probability of favorable outcomes rises. This is not mystical fluff, it is measurable physics. You can practice coherence by synchronizing your breath with heart-focused intention, by feeling gratitude even in the waiting, and by observing thoughts without being consumed by them. This is how the void transforms from a desert into a fertile field. And as you do, the subtle magic of quantum entanglement begins to appear in your daily life. Relationships shift, opportunities align, doors open without apparent cause. The old version of yourself, the one attached to outcomes, defined by circumstance, ruled by fear, begins to dissolve. In its place emerges the conscious architect, the field navigator, the silent observer who recognizes that reality responds to attention, intention, and aligned action. You start noticing repeating numbers, chance encounters, even fleeting insights that feel like whispers from the universe. These are not random. They are the language of the quantum field, guiding you through the void to your breakthrough. At this stage, practical exercises become critical. You can create a daily practice where you sit quietly, record patterns, and consciously ask the field for guidance. You can track synchronicities and ask, what am I meant to notice here? You can visualize desired outcomes while inhabiting the emotional state of their realization, as if the breakthrough has already occurred. Joe Dispenza calls this the rehearsal of the future, and Michael Talbot describes it as participation in the holographic nature of reality. By doing this, you are no longer a passive observer. You are a participant in the collapse of possibility into presence. And here is a subtle but profound shift. The void is no longer empty. It is full of unseen, unclaimed potential. It is alive with the energy of creation, waiting for your consciousness to shape it. This realization changes how you relate to fear, uncertainty, and loss. What once felt like punishment now feels like invitation. What once felt like absence now feels like a laboratory for your highest expression. And every small practice of observation, reflection, and alignment strengthens your ability to navigate this space gracefully. But the story doesn't end here. The void, as empowering as it is, also exposes the shadows you have avoided, the old narratives, limiting beliefs, and unconscious patterns that must be confronted before the breakthrough arrives. This is where courage intersects with practice. You may notice resistance, emotional turbulence, or the urge to escape. Each of these is a signal, not a flaw. The universe is showing you exactly what needs attention, exactly where your consciousness must be expanded. And by leaning into the discomfort with curiosity rather than fear, you begin to integrate the lessons embedded in the void. You become, in essence, a co-creator of your evolution. And as you move through this integration, your identity begins to shift. You no longer define yourself solely by what happens outside of you. Instead, you understand that your inner coherence, your alignment, and your attention are primary. You become attuned to the subtle currents of life, sensing opportunities before they appear, noticing patterns before they converge, and stepping into situations with clarity and presence. Relationships reflect your inner state, financial flows respond to your frequency of abundance, and creativity emerges effortlessly because the mind is no longer dominated by scarcity or doubt. The void, once feared, becomes the launching pad of mastery. And here is a gentle reminder. If this resonates, subscribing and joining a community of explorers can provide guidance, insight, and reinforcement as you navigate these quantum thresholds. You are not meant to traverse this void in isolation. Shared exploration amplifies perception, encourages practice, and reinforces alignment. The very act of choosing to witness, to participate, and to expand your consciousness draws the field toward you in ways that cannot be forced. Yet the journey is far from complete. The final layer of the void, the stage where transformation crystallizes, is what we will explore in the next part. This is where your identity, your consciousness, and your practical action converge to produce the breakthroughs that have been waiting, sometimes for years, in silent anticipation. The next part will reveal how to navigate the final threshold, collapse the remaining uncertainty, and step fully into the life you are designed to create. The moment of breakthrough has always been closer than you think. Every pause, every wave of uncertainty, every breath taken in the stillness of the void has been preparing you for this exact moment. What once felt like emptiness now hums with possibility. The patterns you've been noticing, the intuitive nudges you've been recording, the moments of alignment you've been practicing, they converge into a single, undeniable truth. The void was never empty. It was alive, a mirror of your own latent potential waiting for you to claim it. And here is the revelation. Transformation does not occur because external circumstances change. It occurs because your perception, your consciousness, and your vibration shift. You begin to see that life is not happening to you. It is happening through you. Every breakthrough you have ever dreamed of exists first in the unobserved field of possibility. Your role is to collapse it into reality, not by forcing events, but by embodying the state of being that corresponds to the outcome you seek. This is the essence of conscious creation, quantum, manifestation, and true mastery of the self. Consider coherence, the alignment of heart, mind, and intention. When these three converge, your field becomes a magnet for opportunities, synchronicities, and insights. HeartMath research confirms that coherent heart rhythms amplify electromagnetic fields, increasing both intuition and the likelihood that events will unfold favorably. Ancient mystics described this as tuning to the frequency of the divine. The Egyptian priests who navigated the dark chambers of the tomb, the sages who meditated in the mountains, and the Vedantic seers who sat in silent contemplation, all knew that the secret to navigating the void lies not in frantic action, but in alignment, observation, and disciplined presence. And as you embody this alignment, a profound identity shift occurs. You move from being a reactive participant in life to a conscious architect. You begin to notice how relationships act as mirrors, reflecting both unresolved shadows and unexpressed potential. The people around you are no longer random. They are part of the field that teaches you, challenges you, and elevates you. Financial opportunities respond to the frequency of abundance you radiate rather than your desperate effort. Health, creativity, and clarity improve because your energy is no longer dissipated in resistance. Every aspect of your life becomes a reflection of your internal coherence. Practical action, paradoxically, becomes easier in this state. You don't chase, you allow. You observe, you calibrate, you align. One powerful technique is the silent observer practice. Sit quietly, witness thoughts and emotions as they arise, without judgment, and imagine the desired outcome as already realized. Feel it in your body, see it in your mind's eye, hear it in your inner world. This is not fantasy, it is rehearsal of your future self. Every moment spent in this practice strengthens your ability to collapse possibility into presence. Each breath, each attention, each micro-observation becomes an act of creation. And yet, the magic lies in the subtlety. The breakthrough often arrives not with fanfare, but in small, miraculous shifts. A conversation you didn't plan, a chance encounter that feels predestined, an opportunity that appears out of nowhere. All are signals that the void has been successfully navigated. They are confirmations that your consciousness is now in resonance with the field of infinite potential. The universe is responding to your presence. The silent spaces, the waiting, the emptiness you once feared, they have become the launch pad for your next level of reality. But this is also a call to radical responsibility. The void does not remove choice, it magnifies it. Every thought, every attention, every emotional state now has far greater influence. This is why cultivating detachment while maintaining focus is critical. Observe without attachment, act without desperation, and hold your vision without rigid insistence. By doing so, you move through life not as a victim of circumstance, but as a navigator of the quantum field, a conscious architect shaping every possibility into lived reality. And there is a spiritual dimension to this as well. The void teaches you unity. You are not separate from the world you inhabit. You are the perceiver and the perceived, the field and the observer, the question and the answer. Your higher self, future self, and the intelligence of the universe are not distant. They are intertwined in every particle of your being. By recognizing this, fear dissolves, and the sense of isolation lifts. You begin to understand that every challenge, every delay, every pause is a sacred initiation into your own capacity to create, influence, and align with your highest potential. At this stage, your tools become more refined. You may use a synchronicity journal, continue coherence practices, or engage in visualization, but the essence is internal. You are no longer dependent on external validation or control. The breakthrough you seek arises naturally because your inner state has shifted, because you have become the field in which miracles manifest. Every thought, every emotion, every quiet act of observation is now a contribution to the unfolding of your next reality. And the identity shift is profound. You are no longer the person who feared the void. You are the silent observer, the field navigator, the conscious architect. You move through life with clarity and presence, noticing patterns that others miss, recognizing opportunities before they appear, and creating a life that is aligned with your highest self. Stress becomes a signal, intuition becomes a guide, and synchronicity becomes a trusted companion. The void, once a place of fear, is now a sacred chamber of empowerment. And here is where it culminates. The breakthrough is not a single event. It is a process, a series of subtle shifts that accumulate into profound transformation. Relationships improve, financial flow increases, creativity expands, health strengthens, all because you have learned to inhabit the state that generates these outcomes. You have mastered the art of collapsing possibility into presence, of observing into existence, of navigating the void with awareness, courage, and aligned action. And as this transformation anchors, it calls you to a new kind of adventure. To continue the journey, to explore further layers of consciousness, and to refine your capacity as a conscious creator. Consider engaging with others who are exploring these principles, subscribing to this channel for ongoing guidance, and committing to daily practices that reinforce alignment, coherence, and observation. You are no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You are now the orchestrator of your own field, capable of turning uncertainty into opportunity, stillness into power, and potential into reality. And finally, remember this. Every void, every pause, every moment of uncertainty is a sacred initiation. It is the space where old identities dissolve, where potential is primed, and where breakthroughs are born. The path is not about escaping emptiness. It is about walking through it consciously, observing it fully, and allowing it to teach you, guide you, and transform you. Step into this practice, and you will see that what once seemed like waiting was actually the universe conspiring in your favor. Observe, align, collapse possibility into presence. And in this sacred practice, your breakthroughs are not just likely, they are inevitable.